All right, my name is Randal Adcock. Welcome to Finding Your Way. And today we're talking about systems thinking in small business. Now, I have to give a little bit of a waiver here because I have been struggling to come to clear terms on how to approach systems thinking in small business. I did a master's degree in systems theory in community development many years ago, and I have a very deep understanding of how it works, including systems philosophy, systems science, and systems thinking. And I have many ideas on how to apply systems thinking to small business. The problem is there's so many ways to talk about it. I've come up with a number of slides here today in my presentation that I hope will at least get you started as an introduction to systems thinking. And not only this, but systems wisdom, which has really only come into my vocabulary in the last couple of days, realizing that intelligence and thinking are not sufficient. We need a wisdom, something more goal-oriented or value-oriented and methodical in terms of coming up with efficient and effective solutions to our problems. So without further discussion, here we go with our presentation today. So here's Finding Your Way, System Wisdom for Small Business. And we need this more than ever as we're confronted with a world of complexities that are very difficult to navigate, to say the least. We need a better way of thinking about the chaos and complexities of our world today so that we can conduct our business meaningfully and stay in business, for that matter. So I'm going to start with a bit of a definition of systems thinking. That is that systems thinking is a method of recognizing and processing, operationalizing patterns of interaction, that is our business actions, so that we can reduce the perceived complexities of our world and increase effective decision making. I hope that isn't too convoluted, but it actually starts with an understanding of how we all think naturally. We actually are systems ourselves, each one of us. Every living intelligent system is a system. And that is scaled from cells, as we'll discuss later, right up to the whole planet as a whole. So basically what this thinking comes down to is just two things. It's pattern recognition and pattern replication. Now, in the philosophical language, pattern recognition really is managed through logical induction. That is taking perceptions and producing general or abstract ideas from those perceptions. And then pattern replication is taking those ideas, those general and abstract ideas, and then producing new concrete and specific actions. And then there's a feedback that tells us whether our ideas are accurate or not. So it's a continuous feedback loop between general abstract ideas, the actions based on those ideas, and then the perceptions of the outcomes, which feeds back into our ideas. Another way of thinking about systems thinking is that it's a mental model for managing complexity. Now, there happens to be a universal law called requisite variety. And that requisite variety really means that any living intelligent system has to be able to manage the complexity or variety in its environment. So it will identify opportunities and approach those opportunities. It will also identify threats and try to avoid those threats. It's the same for you as a biological organism. It's also true of business if you're functioning properly. You approach opportunities and avoid threats. And so you can use this systems thinking to manage the complexity by finding similarities, patterns of similarities across diverse phenomenon that you experience. We're going to need more examples of this in small business, but we can use systems thinking to spot repeated problems, that is patterns that repeat, and we can understand the ripple effects of those actions, and we can design smarter solutions. So how do we learn what matters most? We are all guided by kind of an invisible hierarchy of needs. This is well known in psychology since the psychologist Abraham Maslow kind of set it up, probably before I was born. He talked about how we all start with basic biological needs, and when those are met, then we become more sociable, and then when our social needs are met, we become more curious about the world. We want to master it. And when we feel like we're mastering things and we're learning really well, we want to self-actualize. Let's see what this baby can do. What can we do to fulfill our potential? And little known to most people, but Maslow later added transcendence at the top of that hierarchy. So a sense of being one with everything. That's like the extreme sense of oneness with the reality. And so that's what it is all about. We are value generators, but values related to our requirements or needs. Learning is about doing and reflecting. And what we do is we learn from doing. We look at what the outcomes of our actions and decide whether they are meeting our goals or not. If they're meeting our goals, then we continue. If we're not meeting our goals with those actions, then we try something different. Now, why is this particularly important in small business? Well, our world is becoming very chaotic, and it's becoming more and more difficult for small businesses who are already wearing many hats to manage all the things that we need to know. I mean, we are faced with all kinds of software, different kinds of markets, different customer requirements, different suppliers. We have accounting systems and so on. And so systems thinking will help us organize the way we think about our businesses so we can be more efficient and effective, producing better decisions. There'll be fewer surprises and more confidence in navigating the changing environment. Let's see how it works. Again, you're going to be seeing a number of these cycling diagrams because I think we have to see our world as iterative or recursive. That is, they're basic things that continue to repeat in our thinking processes. So we act, then we observe, then we reflect, they make meaning out of what we have observed, then we adjust our ideas and act once again. It's a simple cycle for better management, and it applies not only to you as a system, but to your business as a system. And this is scalable, so you can act in very tactical ways or very strategic ways. Doesn't matter. The same kind of loops here apply at all levels. And the more you do it, the better you get. This is something that just continues to improve over time as you zero in on the things that work most effectively. Now, systems wisdom builds on systems thinking. It's a little different because it is very much goal-oriented, values-oriented. It's scalable, and in that when you're thinking in systems with wisdom, you're thinking about not only yourself, but your business, not only your business, but the ecosystem in which your business is embedded. That is your customers and your suppliers, your partners, your staff, the whole thing. And then you're also looking at the bigger picture beyond that, the regional economy or even the global economy, because those things can affect your business just the same as the competitor next door. But you'll start to recognize these patterns and respect the interdependence of all these factors in your business, and you'll be far more effective. Now, one of the best models that I've come across that explains the thinking process and the wisdom is what is called ADKAR. It's a learning process of awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. We're not going to learn anything until we have an element of awareness. That is the context in which we are embedded. What are the systems? What are the events that are going on in our environment? And then desire. So how are we going to improve our situation? We need to, if the context is chaotic, what are we going to do? We become motivated to find the solutions. And that solution begins with knowledge, module number 3 here. That is, what is it that we need to know in order to fulfill our goals? And knowledge by itself isn't very useful until you have an ability to act on that knowledge to fulfill your goal. So that's the 4th step, that is ability to make changes. Number 5 is reinforcement, and that is basically anchoring the learning lessons that you have so that they become routine and habit and automatic, so it doesn't even require any conscious thinking at all. And at that point, your mind is free to consider new issues that you need to be aware of and manage. So you start over again. And this cycle, once again, you get better the more you do it. So let's take a look at this from the ADKAR model point of view. We're awakening systems wisdom here. And that means basically coming to a consciousness of the idea of a system's wisdom. Probably you haven't encountered this. You have encountered the word wisdom before and systems, but what do they mean when you put them together? Wisdom itself is often overlooked in our world. It's maybe thought to be kind of passé, old-fashioned, but the truth is, in my opinion, this is critically important. It's far more important than intelligence, which seems to get all the limelight these days. But we are exploring this, awakening ourselves to the idea of systems wisdom, especially in small business. We live in a world that's been described as VUCA. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. By that we mean that there's a lot of unexpected events happening and sometimes destructive. There's a lot of uncertainty. Things are unpredictable, unfamiliar, and things are getting more complex where everything is connected to everything. That's kind of depicted in this picture. This is known as the butterfly effect. The idea being that a butterfly can flap its wings in Asia and trigger a sequence or cascade of events that ends up being a hurricane in South America. Everything is connected to everything, and there's tipping points in every part of the system. And finally, ambiguous. As people become more and more specialized in their work and they're mastering their trade, they have to miss things that are going on in other knowledge silos or disciplinary silos. So at some point, you don't know their language anymore. It's hard to see how all the parts of our worldviews fit together. And this is particularly obvious in, let's say, political polarization. You have two different camps of people here who don't talk the same language. They don't apparently share the same values. And yet underneath we are all human beings. But this VUCA condition creates a kind of a chaos for us. And that chaos results in information overload, fear of missing out, imposter syndrome, fatigue, critical slowing, and so on. All these different outcomes. The Future Shock was a book that pointed this out over 50 years ago. They said at one point things are going to become so complex and changing so rapidly that we're going to be in the equivalent of culture shock. a world that is no longer familiar. We would be literally in an emotional, psychological state of shock. And what we're doing then is people are pulling back into their safety zones. So you get things like America, Fortress America, or Alberta talking about separations because people feel a need to control their space and not be controlled by outsiders. Not that I defend this, but I think that we have to recognize the pattern overall. So that understanding of the VUCA world in which we live leads to a desire to learn systems wisdom so that we can navigate these very complex, chaotic conditions. So we need to reflect on our values, motivations, and use our ethical compass to kind of get our bearings of what it is that we really want out of our world and out of our business, and how are we going to use that desire to leverage solutions by setting goals, for example, targets, making smart decisions. And so, what do we need to take charge? We need a positive attitude, sense of resilience, agility. We need to set smart goals. We need to understand that every decision we make is about producing positive returns on investment. We are value generators, and we need to recognize that everything we think, do, and say resolves down to the pursuit of these goals and values. But there are some points of high leverage that can best be expressed as little differences that make big differences. Little things like learning how to think in systems that can produce the biggest results in business performance. And recognizing, for example, we need a team approach to do just about anything. Our knowledge has become so specialized that you can't do very much alone anymore. You have to be able to work with people who have complementary knowledge and skills. And another component here is SWOT analysis. That's studying your own organizational and personal strengths and weaknesses in relation to the opportunities and threats in your business environment. We have a little bit more on that later. And so we come to the knowledge in the ADKAR, the K in the ADKAR model. What is it we really need to understand? We need to understand, for example, that everything is connected to everything. We need to understand that we all have boundaries of influence where we can control within our boundaries, but we can only influence things that are in our business environments outside our boundaries. That we need to understand the feedback loops that are produced, and we need to understand how to create key performance indicators, which are part of those feedback loops that help us learn about our own performance. We need to see how the structure drives behavior. How you shape your business model is going to have a large impact on the kinds of things you can do in that business and the kinds of impacts you can make. And then you have to understand this in the context of the broader community and your ethical questions. We have 8 billion people in the world, each of whom thinks that they can do more or less what they want without having significant impact. But if 8 billion people do the same things, we will certainly be having a lot of impact on our world. So the kind of knowledge that we're going to be pursuing is in small business to achieve systems wisdom is to tap into what you already know from life experience, formal education, any training that you've had. And you want to identify any gaps in your knowledge, things that you should know in order to complete your fuller understanding of your business and where it sits in relation to your business environment. You are a continuous learner, and But perhaps the biggest point of leverage, the highest point of leverage, is to understand how you are a learner. And that's basically what systems wisdom and systems thinking are about. They're training you to better understand how it is that you naturally think, and that there's points of high leverage in your patterns of thinking where you can really take off and become a super learner. Now, it's not enough to have the knowledge, you need to be able to apply it. So we have the A for ability in the ADKAR model. How do you actually put it to use? And so you are going to be practicing these skills in systems thinking and systems wisdom, and you're going to apply them in ways that sort of are incremental to the ways you're already doing things. So we're not going to ask for like an immediate phase transition or a paradigm shift. You're going to work around issues that are current in your business, and try to approach them in a slightly different angle. And so this is going to be incremental or recursive, depending on what language you prefer. But you can use these wise tools like timing maps or mind maps, and stakeholder ripple scans to show what kind of impacts your business is going to have on others, your customers and suppliers and partners, etc. And you need to, of course, align these continuously with your goals and values, and the other people you're working with. So, as we're saying, under ability, we learn by doing. Some of the common practices that you're probably intuitively aware of is that you want to mimic the master. Perhaps you learned your trade working for someone else, and you can follow instruction, you can adopt best practices, which are readily available. You can ask ChatGPT or Gemini or other AI, what are the best practices in your line of work? And you will come up with long lists of skill sets. And as I was saying, you need to do this kind of incrementally, taking baby steps so that you don't overwhelm yourself and lose control. It needs to be calculated, calibrated, so that with each change, you're able to monitor what difference it makes or what improvement it makes to your overall performance, so that you learn whether that particular skill had a positive outcome or not. And do you want to reinforce it or try something different? So you're constantly comparing your performance outcomes to the goals, and you can adjust your learning accordingly. So mastery is an innate higher need and ability. You can count on your own innate instincts to guide you toward mastery in the systems thinking and systems wisdom. Now, with the final module, which is reinforcement in the ADKAR model, we need to kind of build a reflective feedback routine into your management. That is time to really think about what you've done and celebrate the small wins. So that if you have, let's say, a coffee buddy in your small business, you want to share your successes and articulate, because understanding comes at the point of articulation. If you have a business coach, you can be telling your coach how things went. Reflect on your recent performance. How did you do? And are you happy with the outcome? How does it make you feel? So you can develop a personal manifesto of wise business leadership for your own business. And so, yes, this all reinforces the learning experience, so that the skills you develop are reinforced. You can recognize, appreciate, and celebrate the small wins, anchor the best lessons learned so they will become habits. And the best habit is the habit of forming better habits. These are like rules of thumb for success, not only in business, but in life as a whole. Now we have another cycle that I want to talk about briefly. This may have some intuitive sense for you that every action starts with goals. What is it you want to achieve, and what's stopping you from achieving those goals? What do you have to do? What barriers and obstacles or gaps do you have to overcome? And then with problem solving, it's kind of a brainstorming of just you know intuitively throwing out ideas and then figuring out how they might be able to solve your problem, close the gap or overcome the obstacles, etc. Then with decision making, you look at all the solutions you came up with and decide which one has the best return on investment. That's which one is going to provide you with the biggest bang for the buck, the highest point of leverage. There's many words that we use in our common vocabulary to capture this idea. And then you will implement that solution by taking action. There will be outcomes that will shape your lesson learning. That is, it's when you digest the feedback that you get from your performance. You study the key performance indicators and compare them with the goals that you set initially and decide whether you want to continue in this pattern. Is it doing well? Or if it's not doing so well, do something different next round. Now, this is all stacked. I'm working on a code of nature that shows that our intelligence and our wisdom is really based on very natural processes that are universal. And so there's be more on that later. But there's let's say, a pattern of nature that is embedded in all of us and makes us able to personally take charge of our lives, secure survival, and move us to self-actualization and even transcendence. But we have to apply ourselves personally to the local circumstances and national and supranational kinds of levels of embedded system that we're in. So that even we have to recognize that even the international economic and political dynamics shape us individually. So we need to accommodate on a personal, local, national level, figure out how we're going to accommodate those opportunities that are emerging in technology, for example, or protect ourselves against the threats, some of which are local, some of which are international. Basically, we're seeing ourselves as embedded systems. If we look at ourselves individually as systems, you'll see that we have needs, values, goals, objective targets. So we see it from narrowing down from something that's very broad and general and let's say best described in the hierarchy of needs, but we give further definition so that these can be operationalized. Eventually we come down to targets, something that's measurable, that we can actually create key performance indicators for. And so that gives us something concrete and specific to work with in our learning, whether it's knowledge or skills. We have also a pattern of talents, skills, knowledge, wisdom leading to behavior. Again, going from the very general down to the very specifics. We need to understand that each of us is a value generator. And this is in us by design, by evolution. If you don't produce value for yourself and for others, then you can't exist. It's just that simple. And so every decision we make is a value proposition decision, a return on investment. Every output that we produce needs to be of greater value than the inputs. Otherwise, you've got destruction, or in physics terms, entropy. So we use the KPIs to assess our personal performance and give us feedback. That return on investment is a question of the, let's say, an equation of how closely you're achieving the value. the information that you're getting leads you to your goals, and you can be doing better or worse depending on what action and rules you're following. Essentially, the bottom line is we define ourselves by acting and doing. Here's another sort of a graphic image of how you are a system. We don't normally think of it this way, but if you dissect the human being, you intellectually, you will see that we're made up of organ systems, like circulatory, digestive, nervous systems, endocrine system, and so on. Each of these organ systems is made up of organs. The organs, in turn, are made up of tissues, and the tissues are made up of cells. We could go on and show how cells are actually made up of complex organelles, DNA, proteins, and other things. And each of these, in turn, are made up of atoms, molecules, and the molecules are made up of atoms, and atoms are made up of other subatomic particles. I think you're getting the picture here. So we do need to understand ourselves. We are inherently, from the bottom up, systems. And now when we look at the bigger picture, you are at the heart of your business, which is a system. And business is a part of the local business ecosystem, which is a part of the regional business ecosystem. You could expand this outward to even the planetary or global ecosystems and economies. But the best way for you to apply yourself with systems wisdom is to understand that you are a set of potentials, talents, knowledge, skills, interests, resources, and requirements. You have social contacts. And when you put all of this profile together and match it up with the opportunities and the threats in your business environment, you've got a business model that is going to work for you. This business model between you and the local business ecosystem is kind of a transition area where you get to construct your own system that optimizes your performance in the context of your business environment. And so that is the conclusion here. I hope that this has been useful as an introduction to systems thinking and systems wisdom. Really, this is just the starting point. This is not the end point. We have a lot to learn, but I think it's helpful to understand that this emerges from us naturally. We are in fact systems. We are actually in fact we're systems that are thinking and wise. But to become self-aware of these internal processes gives us the opportunity to adjust our thinking processes to be more efficient and effective. Again, in the context of the business environments in which we operate. And with that, I conclude. And if you have any questions or thoughts you would like to share, you're welcome to offer.
Yes, I'm going to share something with you that comes right out from what you're speaking about. First, definition. I think we don't think long enough and hard enough about the word wisdom. And I found the definition a long time ago, and you may have heard me use it a couple of times. Wisdom is knowledge tempered by experience. And I think it's practical. And as you know from things I do and say, that I tend to lean towards practicality in a lot of things.
Right.
But I just created a little chart here that ties what you were speaking about and trying to get it into a practical form. I don't know if you're able to see what's on this sheet.
Oh, it's not
Add card down the left side.
right.
And performance management, starting with recruiting and hiring, then a personnel policy, then the job descriptions, orientation checklist, work plan appraisal, Then you have the appraisal itself, the appraisal interview, then the employee career plan, which is their feedback, and then you start back at the top again. But you could draw lines from each of the letters in EDCAR to where it applies, where we can use it in a practical way in performance management.
One of the things I learned from putting this together is how cyclical everything is, and it's be best described as a spiral because each iteration should be an improvement on the last. So you actually got a direction or a trajectory that you're learning on. So this round is better than the last round. But underlying it reminds me of how DNA is formed out of four fundamental nucleic acids. So, but I do believe that there are patterns that repeat like this. And if we can master those at the core and become conscious and deliberate in our efforts, we become highly efficient and effective and better able to cope with the chaos that is surrounding us. Not only that, but if we could organize our local business ecosystems along the same principles so they can assess their own local economy and do the brainstorming, problem solving, decision making, come up with ways to improve the local business ecosystem so that it serves its members, and then scale that up so that the whole regional business ecosystem is also optimized, serving its constituent local business ecosystems. So I see the stackable, or you might call it, these are embedded systems, but once the idea is in place at the personal level, it can automatically expand outward so that the business people who form the local chamber of commerce or a Wayfinders chapter are then saying, well, it worked for me and my business. Wouldn't it work for the community as a whole? And start applying the same systems thinking, systems wisdom to the local economy or community as a whole. And then when enough locals are figuring this out, it becomes a regional initiative and self-reinforcing. So I see this as unfolding like a fractal.
Yeah, I can see the potential.